Hello everyone, it's Hugh here. I'm sure you all know who I am by now. I'm here with another one of our Focus Series webinars. So there's lots of new people who've joined us for today. For anyone who hasn't seen these before, they are all available on our website. Log into your partner page. On there is a link to our webinar series. From there, you'll be able to see all of our recorded sessions that we've had already. We have 20 config challenges as well as 23 focus topics already, and they are ever expanding as well. Please take a look at them. Anyway, for today, what we are going to be looking at, something very, very exciting, and I'm sure the reason why so many of you have joined us. Version 11 of config is here. It is finally out. It is live. It is in the universe. And what I want to do today is I want to give you a quick overview of some of the differences between version 10 and version 11, both in config and in the app. To do that and to aid me, I have two simultaneous config versions running on my laptop, one on version 11, one on version 10, and I also have two simultaneous apps running. Again, one on version 10, one on version 11. I will no doubt get confused at some point of which one is which, so please forgive me for any indiscretions, but let's get started with some of the core differences. So let's get started with a nice simple one. The pairing dialog for tree, for air, and for network devices has had a little bit of an overhaul. So on the previous version of config, tree and air device search, we all know what it looks like. Left-hand side is the devices that can be found that you haven't added yet. Right-hand side is the devices that you have available to either add to or that have already been added. Nice and simple. In config V11, it hasn't changed dramatically, so don't worry, it's not like it's a complete redesign. It's just ever so slightly more flexible. So when you open it up, you'll probably have it just like this, and it'll only show you what is discoverable on the tree branch. So it won't show you any devices you've already added. You can see all of the devices you already have down here by Show My Tree Devices. That then gives you your list exactly as you used to have before. So it's just a little extra functionality. You get to hide that list if you wanted to. In here, it will show you what branch it's on and what extension it's on and its serial number. We can also actually filter this by the particular tree or air base as well. So we could filter what we can see on each particular tree extension, and we can even filter by branch as well. Just a few extra functional bits of looking through it. Other than that, it's much the same. Plus, to add a new device, right or left to replace a device or unpair a device. So that is change number one. Change number two, and this is a biggie, is around user management. So user management used to be the following. You had users. When you created a user, you then assigned them to user groups. In a user group, you then said what their rights were. And then on a function block, you said which user group could use that specific function block in the app. It is very simple. Simple in many ways is good, but simple isn't good when you've got a system that is potentially more complex. The example I gave the other day was, imagine we had a commercial building where we wanted to put staff into groups, and then we wanted to give a group access to a function block. So we could have, let's say, a guest, staff, and CEO user groups. This is great in principle. We could have the, I don't know, maybe the entrance hall as guests. So anyone, if they've got the app, they can go into the entrance hall and mess around because we want to show them how amazing Loxone is. All the staff members have staff access. This gets them throughout the building generally. And then the CEOs have CEO access. This gets them into restricted areas of the building. But the problem with that level of authentication is in most buildings, you will end up with just one or two people who will be a little bit different. And the key one I can think of there would be somebody like an IT officer. An IT officer is a staff member, but they probably need access to just one or two things that would normally be CEO level, like maybe the server room. And the only way we could do this in version 10 was to create them an entirely new user group just for that IT access. Then we'd have to give that IT access to just that one single user group that it was relevant to. I don't know, let's just pretend it's that. So we'd then have to say that that IT access group is only relevant for that one function block. But then, as well as having our user, who is the IT person, assigned to that IT access group, we've then also got to remember to assign all of the CEOs to that IT access group as well. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to see this function block. In version 11, this has been completely overhauled. We've still got users, and we can still create as many users as we want. We've still got user groups, and we can still create as many user groups as we want. The additional benefit here is that rights have been broken out to a degree. And so what this means is you can assign users to groups, you can assign groups to other groups. So you could have a bunch of subgroups that are then assigned to a master group, and you can assign rights to users as well as to groups. So you could do it on a master level where you've got a user, let's say Hugh, and we want to manage Hugh's group permissions. So we want to add Hugh to a member of staff. And that's great. Hugh is now a member of staff. But we could also simultaneously manage Hugh's individual permissions. So Hugh has access to the following elements. And currently there's nothing. So Hugh is a member of staff. So Hugh would have access to anything the staff group has. So the staff group could have access to the web interface, could have access to, I don't know, to change their own passwords, and that's about it. But because Hugh is a little bit special, we want Hugh to have access to change other users. And so instead of having to create an entire new user group to put Hugh into so that he has user management, we could just add that as a specific right to him alone as a user management. In addition to that, we can now assign objects to a group. So we could say that the members of the staff group have access to everything that's under the bathroom, the bedroom, the boot room, the conservatory, you know, all of your different rooms. And we can also say what function blocks that group has access to. But then again, if Hugh is a little bit different, then in addition to his staff access, we could also say that he can access one very, very particular room or function block, like the boiler room. And then that would only be relevant for him as a user and not for the group as a whole. But he still carries on all of the rights that the group has. We can also say whether that access is internal or external or both for those particular access. And we can also put a schedule on access as well. So we could say that the staff could only access the functions related to the bathroom between certain hours, which we do via the schedules. So we could say that we give them very, very specific times of day that they can use the bathroom in the function blocks. And then on function blocks themselves, we again are not limited to a single group with permission to this function block. We can really, really, really graph it down. We can say multiple groups have access to this function block, or even specific users. And so that is a big, big change that for a normal domestic property, any systems you've got out there shouldn't have the slightest bit of difference, but just gives us a lot more flexibility when it comes to commercial buildings. The next thing I'd like to talk about is Remote Connect. Now, previously on a Loxone mini server and on previous versions of config, if we wanted to get remote access to this mini server, then we would have to configure it. We would have to obviously make sure it's in the right time zone, naughty me. We would have to make sure the network details are correct. We would then probably have to change the HTTP port to be something obscure. Then we'd have to change the port for the remote cloud service, and then we'd have to do port forwarding on our router. It's not necessarily the best way around. It works perfectly, but it doesn't work usually for 4G routers because they have carrier grade NAT. It doesn't work for complex network setups. Some commercial buildings are very, very funny about port forwarding being done on their networks because it's essentially creating an open hole in their firewall. And so with version 11 and with Gen 2 mini service, this is only on the Gen 2 mini server, we have a service called Remote Connect. The reason it's only on the Gen 2 mini server is because we want to make sure that it is secure. And so it requires that HTTPS encryption with the SSL certificate, which is only available on the Gen 2. The Gen 1, we cannot do HTTPS or SSL on. It's too labor intensive on the processor. It would degrade the lifespan of the mini server. But when you've got a Gen 2 and version 11, when you configure your mini server, you now have the option under network. You can't change the HTTPS port, it's got to be 443. But under external access, you can choose remote access via remote connect. And when you tick that, and as long as you're using the Loxone SSL certificate, you just apply and send, no port forwarding required. It just works. What it does is it uses the MQTTS service and it creates a reverse SSH tunnel. So as soon as your app from your phone, wherever you are in the world, requests connection, then it's actually the mini server that's got an outbound connection, and then your phone then reverses the tunnel to get back into your mini server. So Gen 2 mini server, V11, no port forwarding required. Cool. When we get onto the app and certain things in the app, you'll see if I go back to my old web interface, look at this, I've now got a mini server update available. So I've now got an update to version 11. I can choose not right now. And in version 11, if you choose not right now, then it will hide it for 2 weeks. So it will be 2 weeks before you get that notification again. Another big update to version 11, and this is completely new, so there's no comparison I can show you with old config, is a brand new function block called System Schematic. System Schematic is so cool. I've got a dedicated webinar to it, so if you would like to see it in more detail, please look at the dedicated webinar. You can upload a JPEG or a PNG image up to 2 megabytes, 2,000 kilobytes in size, and that, as we discussed the other day, is huge because there are services available like TinyPNG where you can upload a PNG or JPEG image and it will compress it down without losing any of the image fidelity. I tried this out myself on a free stock image that was 4 megabytes when it started, and it compressed it down to 380 kilobytes. And I zoomed right in and there was no pixelation. And so you upload your image, and then when you've uploaded your image, do I have an image to upload? That is a good question. It doesn't really matter what I upload. Let's just choose any old image. When you upload your image, you can then just start overlaying elements. Any element which could be visualized in the app can be added to the system schematic. So that is not only function blocks, but it also includes things like digital inputs, analog inputs, and relays. So anything you can want, you can overlay onto this, drag them where you want, change the size of the objects, do whatever you want with them. You can also choose a default object that's visualized in this. And then when you've done that in the app, wherever you've put it, here we have one, we should have one in the office, in our office. Here we go, system schematic. There we go. There's a floor plan of our office. I can zoom in and out. On this floor plan, I have overlaid our blinds so I can see that they're currently closed. I've overlaid our lighting, our music, and our room controller. And we can see they're green when they're active, and it even tells me what music is currently playing and what lighting mood I'm currently in. And I can also click on one of them and it takes me straight to that function block. Super slick. You can also put system schematics on a system schematic. So you could have a picture of the whole house and overlay different system schematics for different subsections of the house or building. So this is a massive feature that's been introduced in version 11. Another brand new feature in version 11, and again, specifically for the Gen 2 mini server, is the option to do SEER communication. So under messages on a Gen 2 on version 11, you have SEER as an available message format. SEER, I don't actually know what it stands for, but it is a industry standard alarm communication protocol. And so you could then get Loxone and your mini server to send notifications to a proper alarm receiving center. You don't need to have a graded alarm to send signals to an alarm receiving center. They'll accept signals from any alarm system. And then you could have a real person ring you up to tell you what zone's gone off. And you could then also have something like a proper key holding service with a man in a van who will drive out to your house when there is an alarm. Another brand new feature, touch surface. It's not a brand new product, it's been there for ages. The touch surface before. If I just add one in to version 10, doesn't matter what its installation place is, we had the option of the T5 input or input 6, and that was about it. We could show the individual buttons if we wanted, we could choose to use the activation LEDs or not, but those were the only functions we had. Now, on version 11, with a touch surface, I have the same, but if I untick use LEDs for activation, they then become usable outputs. And so then I can use the outputs, the LEDs on a touch surface for whatever I want. I could use them for whatever custom config I want. I could tie them into the volume level of the music service. They'll indicate to me how loud the music is if I wanted to. Cool. Other additions. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a little bit out of breath. I'm trying to rag through these as quickly as I can. Live view. Live view has been there for ages. Live view with manual value adjustment was added in version 10. This allows us in live view to actually affect parts of the system as if we were really doing it. So we could manually adjust any input value. But in version 10, we couldn't affect outputs. Outputs could not be affected by live view with manual value adjustment. Now, in version 11, when you're in live view with manual value adjustment, if I just let this reboot. Come on, come on. Live view with manual value adjustment, you can now also activate relays and outputs through manual value adjustment as well. Cool. Another brand new feature. For any function block that can be visualized in the app, you can add something called hint texts to this function block. This is available here in the parameters. And what you can do with this is you can actually write things like short walkthroughs and manuals for your customers. So in something like a blinds block, you could write, will automatically raise and lower depending on room temperature and sunshine values after sunset or after sunrise. But anything that you can visualize in the app, you can add a hint text to. So this is a lighting controller. Choose more in the app to change your moods. And then in the app, these can be then seen as well. Can't remember exactly where they're seen. I think they're under expert settings. You can see them. So that is another new feature. So if you wanted to add specific text that the customer can see in the app to see what a specific block does, you can add them little manuals and little guides. Cool. Another brand new function block that has been added to version 11 is the responsive lighting controller. This is designed around office spaces. And the way that this works is you put in your target brightness, so the lux level that you want to hit in that room. You set a hysteresis value and the percentage step size you want the lights to be. Then you tie a brightness sensor into CB, and then whatever you want to activate this block into EN. For instance, maybe when the first person arrives in the morning. And then the AQ output works with any type of actuator that can be used for lighting. So you can use it with our own lighting groups, with our own tree spots when they're smart actuators and they'll work. You can use it for mains dimms channels, 0 to 10 volts, any kind of output it is working with, obviously as long as it's dimmed. Again, I've got a specific webinar on this function block and I actually show it working on my demo case next to me. Another thing to mention that isn't a hardware change, no new hardware required. Our DALI extension, if I just add this in, now accepts DALI Type 8 fittings. So you can now use DALI Type 8 fittings with Loxone. Type 8, for anyone that doesn't know, is color changing fittings. Specifically, we can use them for warm white or white color adjustment. So when you want to move between warm white and cool white for things like, again, daylight responsive lighting. We can't use them currently for RGBW lighting. But if you've got light fittings which have color temperature adjustment, DALI Type 8 is now supported. Another brand new function block is the emergency alarm. The emergency alarm works quite similarly to the assisted living alarm. You tie in whatever inputs you want, both from touch switches and third-party inputs, and you can then specify an amount of time that that input has to be held for, and if the input is held for that period of time, it activates an alarm. Nice and simple. Whew, right. Other new additions, system status messages. System status messages have been in there for a while, and we can see them here. So we can see that one of our door and window contacts has a low battery. You can now acknowledge system status messages, and when they're acknowledged, they disappear and they never bother you again, even if they are still relevant. Another new feature that is relevant to version 11, but again requires no hardware update, NFC code touch. If you're using the NFC code touch for multiple outputs, so remember it's got those multiple functions, so you could use one NFC code touch for, say, the gate and the garage. Previously, you used to have to do the number of the function you wanted, then tick, then your fob or your code. You no longer need to do the tick. So you can just straight off take your fob, press 2, present your fob, and it will then do function 2. So no tick required to select the output that you want. We also now support quick functions for Apple Watch, quick actions. I unfortunately can't show you this on a real life Apple Watch, just purely because I don't have one. But if you do have an Apple Watch, please give it a try. I am told that it's a brilliant feature. Moving back over to the app, and we will finish up with some changes that have come to the app. One of the first changes that have come to the app. Some people, heathens, don't like the tile layout. Bear in mind, we go for the tile layout because we're following Google and Apple's user experience guidelines. But if you are not a fan of tiles and you just like lists of things, in the app, you can now change to list view. So when you're in the configuration of the app, down here where it has appearance, under here, you can change it off of tile view. And then in the app, we just get straight up lists, no tiles. So if that is something you like, you can now do that in the app. And then to finish off with, this for me is the really, really big thing. This is the absolute pièce de la resistance, the thing that really, really nails it in the app version 11. And to show you what I mean, I'm going to go to app version 10. So this is version 10. And this is a music zone in version 10. And as we can see in version 10, we've got a list of the favorites. We can play, we can pause, we can do next song, previous song, volume up, volume down. But if we want to get into any actual useful features like searching for a specific song or setting favorites, we have to press more. Then we have to choose that we want Spotify. Then when we're in Spotify, we have to choose a magnifying glass. Then we have to search for what we want. Then when we've searched for what we want, we have to press enter. And then we have to choose whether we want song, artist, album, or playlist. Then if we want to make it a favorite, we have to press the 3 dots. Then we have to select it as a favorite. And you can see that there are just so many different button presses that we need to do. The music interface in version 11 has been completely overhauled. If I head into this room here, which is the room I'm in, here is the music, press it, no more. It's all there, all in one place. Look at that. We've got a global search function. So from a single place, I can do a search. So if I want to search for Absolute Radio, I don't have to go into radio first. I just search it here and then say I want internet radio. And look at that, there's my Absolute Radio showing up. So global search. I've also got a redesigned favorites. So under start, you'll see your favorites there with your album art. So really, really nice layout. This actually mirrors the layout of Spotify. I'm gonna probably embarrass myself with showing you what I play regularly on Spotify. I have not played songs from Mulan regularly. I want to just add, that must have been somebody else using my account. But you can see that we follow a very, very similar layout to how Spotify follows it. with that tiles. We've then got our favorites. We've got our own built-in playlists, our own built-in library, our line-ins, and again, a complete rehash of the zone groupings. Zone groupings is now much easier to do. Easy to create a group and select exactly which zones I want in it, and similarly easy to edit the group or break the group apart. So much, much quicker. And then for Spotify and for Spotify accounts, we've always had the ability that you could have multiple Spotify accounts on the same music server. But what I imagine happened in many people's households is because you had to select the Spotify account you wanted to listen out of first, there would often come the point where somebody would listen out of one Spotify account in one room, and then somebody would accidentally choose the same one in another room. What you can now do, oh, see, look, it's so similar to the real Spotify. I accidentally went into the real Spotify. But what you can now do is actually specify a default Spotify account for that room. So then anytime you choose something on Spotify, either by the global search or down here, it will always play from this Spotify account. And whatever Spotify account you've chosen, it will pull through your own personal Spotify playlists. So whatever you've got as your playlists on Spotify, there we go. There's my playlists down here. Those are exactly the same playlists that show up here as well. Your own personal Spotify library, new releases, favorite playlists all in one place. So really, really slick user interface. And if I show you the new releases, take a look at this. New releases on the Loxone app. And then if I go to new releases on Spotify, so this is where I embarrass myself because it normally does show up here, new releases. Let's just search for new releases. Oh, I'm going to embarrass myself. Browse. Never mind. Anyway, if I was able to see new releases, which I did the last time I did this, it shows up exactly the same as it does in the Loxone app. Like not only the same releases, but in the same order with the same tile overview. And so what we've done is we've made our app match the Spotify app for the user experience. So the tile overviews with the play button on them. The reason for that is so that people can very, very quickly just move between apps and get the same user experience in each app. You'll see the same on the Apple Music app, which means no instruction manual necessary. As long as you've figured out how to use one of these, you can use all of them. Whew, right, I think that about covers it. One last thing on music, just while I remember. Equalizer, if you do like messing around with the equalizer on your music system, you can now send equalizer settings to multiple zones. So if you've figured out an equalizer setting that you like, you can send it to multiple zones. Right, I think that about covers it for everything I have to show you in version 11. There are loads and loads and loads of extra features that have been added to version 11. Please take a look at our changelog. This has just been a snippet of some of the most important ones that I think is important for all of our partners to know and to understand. Get yourself version 11. We've been using it, or rather the alpha versions of it internally in our office for a good few months now without any hiccups. And we're now at release version. Get it on your homes, get it on your customers, update and have fun. Thank you very much, everyone.